Hi guys, I'm psychotherapist and healer Nani Solares. And this week I've been talking about cultivating the divine mind. So the divine mind is an awakened, expanded, spiritual, active, intentional mind that can be cultivated and developed through an intentional process. That's the operative word, intentional, throughout the lifetime. That's another operative part of that phrase, throughout the lifetime. We are meant to have complete control over our minds. Complete control. Having complete control over our minds leads to a supernatural, miraculous life. God made the being to be in charge of the brain, not the brain to be in charge of the being. Unfortunately, in most people's dynamic, it is the brain that is in charge of the being because they haven't begun this work of gaining control over their mind. And make no mistake, this is a work that we all need to do if we want to be any level of healthy and adaptive. Because this world, what it creates is individuals with minds and brains that are bat crap crazy. Here's something we have to understand. It's not just our soul that is divine, but everything that is subject to the soul is also divine. Now, what do I mean that everything is subject to the soul? I mean that the real part of our being is our soul. We are only here because we have a soul that's here to do some work through this human life. And in order to do this work through this human life, we've been given a human body, we've been given a human brain, we've been given a human heart, we've been given a mind, we've been given a personality, a psyche, and we've been given this life. So all of those things are actually in service and subject to the soul. Now, unfortunately, if the soul is not awakened, then that individual ends up living a completely human, superficial experience of life. They will have to at some point awaken their soul to live their truth. And if they didn't do it in this life, then they'll have to do it in the next one or the next one after that. And we all keep coming back in order to deepen this work, because this is the process of enlightenment. The stages of gaining control over our mind and developing the divine mind, they go along with the healing journey. Now, we are holistic beings. We are a soul who lives in a body, who has a brain, who has a personality, who has a psyche, who lives in the world. This complicates everything because we identify so much with the human experience. This is why so many people often don't live their soul's experience of life. But we're holistic beings. So if you're going to cultivate the divine mind, it's also because you're doing some deep healing work based on the awakening of your soul and the spiritual journey of continuing to awaken and evolve spiritually. So all of these go hand in hand: the spiritual awakening, the spiritual journey, the healing work of our lives, the cultivation of the divine expanded mind. They will all lead to the other, and they all are necessary for the other to develop. So this is a completely holistic experience. I'm just dealing right now in these particular teachings with the mind aspect of it. But you can listen to a whole bunch of other videos where I'm actually talking about emotional healing and psychological healing and spiritual awakening. So here's the process through which the divine mind can begin to develop. And I've delineated 4 stages. So the first stage in this process is the awareness of the problem. And as we know, we can do nothing about a problem until we acknowledge we have a problem to begin with. And so this is usually when someone begins some kind of a process of therapy or self-help or healing, and they become aware that their mind is out of control and that most of their problems are the result of destructive belief systems, faulty programming, and incessant mental chatter. Because at the end of the day, guys, this is where all of our problems come from for all of us. For me, this started when I started my therapy journey, and I had a therapist who was really good about helping me see the destructive consequences of the negative beliefs that I had built up and developed through my life. Living with the mind that is completely rogue, completely undisciplined, is what Socrates called the unexamined life. And he said the unexamined life is not worth living. It's the mind where there's no self-awareness, there's no gatekeeper, and you are just constantly being triggered by what's happening outside of yourself, responding and reacting from these triggers, making choices from these triggers, and then creating the same negative loops of consequences and outcomes based on this dynamic. The second is after you become aware, oh crap, I have a problem with my thinking. I need to do something about this out of control mind. The second stage of that is you start having a daily moment to moment awareness of your thoughts. That actually means you start listening to your thoughts. And this is not for the weak. This process is challenging, obnoxious, irritating, and it seems like it's never going to end because this is where you become aware of so many self-defeating thoughts and negative thoughts. This is where you become aware of the habitual nature of your thinking, but now you're aware of it. Awareness is the key to change, but awareness always makes things more difficult. And this is where a lot of people give up because it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work always being aware. It's a lot of hard work tuning in. It's a lot of hard work listening to your brain. But this is the very necessary beginning of being able to have a chance of cultivating the divine mind. This doesn't mean you will. This is only giving you the possibility of a chance. This is where we start living consciously. And living consciously can be very abrasive, as we all know. The third stage here is that we begin the process of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the concept of neuroscience where we change the layout and the framework of our brains and the landscape of our brains literally and physically by changing our thinking. This is how we deprogram old, archaic, destructive belief systems. And this is how we program in new, constructive belief systems based on our healing journey and those things that we want to develop. This is where you begin to have the capacity to become the gatekeeper of your mind. And I always say everybody's mind has to have a gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper has to be them. I have to be the gatekeeper of our mind. What is a gatekeeper? That thought is not coming in. That thought is going to be released. Yes, I'll think that thought. Yes, I'll entertain that thought. Yes, I'll expound on that thought. It's basically observing the thoughts and choosing intentionally which thoughts we're going to entertain, which thoughts we won't. Again, this is all hard work. So you got to hunker down if you're going to do this work, and you got to know that you're in it for the long haul. It does get a lot easier, and it does change your life profoundly. But I'm not going to lie and say that any of this is easy. So here are the aspects of neuroplasticity. One, you become aware of a toxic thought when it enters your conscious mind. What is a toxic thought? A toxic thought is any thought that is negative, repetitive, or worrisome. Those are thoughts that belong in the garbage. You shouldn't even be thinking them. So you become aware of the toxic thought first and foremost. Second, you change that thought in some way, in real time. What do I mean by real time? In the here and now. Because in order to reprogram our mind, consciousness and the conscious mind is like, let's say there's a word program on my computer, and in order to edit it, I have to double click on it from the hard drive and open it. And once it's opened, I can edit it and I can make changes, and then I can save it and I can close it, and then it goes back in the hard drive, change. Well, this is how we reprogram, but we reprogram in real time when that belief or neural pattern has been triggered by something in our environment that has now activated it. And now you're thinking that thought, which at the beginning, you're going to be thinking the destructive thoughts. So you become aware of the destructive thought. That means you've opened the file, and now you're aware that you've opened the file, and now you're going to change the thought to consciously in real time alter it. How do we do that? How do we alter it in real time? You reverse it. or you bring some kind of an affirmation. So for me, I had this running affirmation because I did a lot of self-esteem work at the beginning. And I had this running affirmation that I would say every day, probably multiple times a day. I love and accept myself exactly as I am. So if I had a self-defeating thought, I could just say, I love and accept myself exactly as I am. Or if I had some kind of self-destructive, self-defeating thought, I would also say, no, I'm not thinking of myself that anyway. I love myself. I'm beautiful and perfect just as I am. So this is one way to challenge our thinking. Another way to challenge those toxic thoughts in real time is to apply logic or rationality to it. So for example, if you think everybody dislikes you, then it's not everybody that's the problem. It's you that has a pattern and a belief system that everybody dislikes you. So if you are walking through your life one day, it's noon and I've already thought 2 people dislike me, then you can apply logic and rationality to that and you can say, it's noon and I've already decided that 2 people don't like me. And this is actually a belief system. It's not true. I am a likable person and there are plenty of people that like me. So you can bring logic, rationality, and then at the same time, challenge it with the reverse or an affirmation. You can always assert this is a toxic thought and I won't think it. Which leads me to the third way that we challenge toxic thoughts, which is to learn to release them. This is something we start to gain mastery over through meditation. In meditation, we're taught to observe without judgment and then to just let a thought dissipate. We can learn to do this in real time in our lives too. I do this very effectively now in my life. If there's a thought that pops up to my conscious mind, which still happens to me all the time, that I do not want to think because it's not a constructive thought, it's not a higher thought, I'll just release it. I just won't pay attention to it. You can do that with your thoughts. So this is one aspect of releasing thoughts through breath work, intentionality, grounding exercises, and meditation. We can begin to clear our mind in our day-to-day life. Because what we learn to do in meditation, we actually generalize it and take it into our day-to-day life. This is one of the reasons, just one of the reasons why meditation is so important. Meditation is also one of the most powerful ways that we gain control over our mind. And you will not have a chance to develop the divine mind if you don't first get control over your mind. And these things that I'm talking about right now are the 4 stages to starting to get control over your mind. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the actual stages of developing the expansive divine mind. But this is just the beginning where you become aware you have a problem and you start becoming the gatekeeper of your thoughts and you start actively reprogramming in your day-to-day life through the cognitive work. And the last thing I want to say about this is that this is a process that will go on throughout our lifetime. This is a forever work we will be doing, guys. Not something you're going to do for a little while and then you're done. No, this is going on forever. However, you get to a point in your life that this becomes your norm. This becomes who you are. You've integrated this relationship with your mind. And from that perspective, it becomes a lot easier to do it. The beginning time is hard. You're going to have to fight for it. That's for sure. But over time, it does get easier, a lot easier. And it gets a lot more powerful. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how we develop and cultivate the divine mind, the expanded mind, and the stages that that goes through. And that will entail how we go from a complete mess of a human being whose mind is out of control and is their worst enemy to an awakened soul who is now living a supernatural life and creating a profound reality with their mind. So make sure to tune into that one and also the meditation that goes along with these teachings, which is how we create the divine mind at an energetic level. This is where we sow the seeds to be able to manifest this work in our lives. I'll see you there. Bye.